Welcome to the Cameo show. I'm your host, Greg, and today we have a very, very, very special guest, none other than Cameo.
Hello.
We're switching things up a little bit today because Cameo has a very exciting story to tell, and I'm going to be the interviewer, and she's going to be the interviewee. But I want to start things off with a dad joke, as we always do. I kind of need a haircut, so this was a good one. How does the moon cut his hair?
I don't know.
Eclipse it.
Eclipse.
So today is very special because this past weekend, you did something that was way outside of your comfort zone. It was an incredible opportunity. And there's a whole lot to unpack. So let's just kind of dive into it and just kind of start us off. What happened this weekend?
This weekend, I had the opportunity to sing the National Anthem at a Supercross event in Raymond James Stadium. So it was a full stadium where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers play, of people there to see motocross, obviously. But I got to open the ceremonies with the National Anthem. It was a complete honor and privilege and a moment that I will never forget because it was literally something that I have dreamed about since I was 12, probably. 12-year-old me used to sing the National Anthem for anything and everything in my hometown in Ohio and surrounding areas. And I always envisioned this day. And it finally happened at 42. So decades later, I was able to see that come to fruition. And it was quite an experience.
And you killed it.
Thank you.
You nailed it. Leading up to it, it was a lot of anxiousness, excitement, anxiety, whatever you want to call it, but it was, you could cut the air in the house for the months leading up to it. And we didn't really want to say too much about it just to, I don't know why. We just didn't want to
Oversell it. We, Greg and I both, but I'll speak for me. I have become a person who likes to work in silence and then just kind of show up to big moments. So I don't mean that to sound arrogant or, conceited in any way, shape, or form. It's just, I do a lot of grinding that I don't talk about.
Yes.
And, I've sang my whole life. We sing, we produce music, we put music out on a regular basis and don't talk a lot about it just because it's just something that we love and just something that we do.
Love the process.
And so this was another one of those moments. Also, you're right. There were a lot of emotions. I mean, it was a huge emotional roller coaster for me. One, because it was such a big opportunity. Two, because it was so many people and such a big event to be singing for. And my last experience with singing the National Anthem was not a successful one. And so I wasn't 100% sure and confident in myself about how I would show up to this moment. So I didn't talk a lot about it.
Yeah.
Not that not talking about it would have made it any better if it didn't go well.
Yeah.
It still would have sucked.
Yeah.
But it just is something that I prefer to behave that way. I stay focused that way with my blinders up, doing rather than talking.
Well, let's jump back to that. Before we talk about this past weekend and all the excitement about that, take us back to the last time you sang the National Anthem and what happened.
Yeah, we talked about this on a previous episode recently, so I won't go into extreme details. But the last time I tried out to sing the National Anthem at a spring Pittsburgh Pirates baseball game here in Southwest Florida. The reason it didn't go well was because right before they called my name, I had no idea when they were going to call my name. There were no numbers. I didn't know anyone. I had gone to the restroom and they called my name right when I was in the restroom.
Literally pants down around her ankles. I looked in the the bathroom down the first base dugout line. And I was like, they just called your name. And I saw you pull your pants up and run out of the bathroom.
Yeah.
It was hilarious.
So not only are you nervous in that situation, and when you're nervous or excited about something, your heart rate accelerates, your breathing becomes more rapid and intense, you're sweaty, your palms are sweaty, your knees weak. Yeah. Then add that I literally ran down the baseline, grabbed the mic and started singing.
The national anthem.
The gravity of that moment was like, okay, well, here I am in front of all these people singing the national anthem, no pressure, trying out to do it. So you want to do well, but also I'm completely out of breath.
Yep.
And I'm out of breath because I'm nervous. It just didn't go well. And I hadn't done it in a really long time. And so that wasn't my best performance. I didn't get that gig and I wasn't proud of it. Obviously it was a blow. It was a blow to my ego. It was a blow to me kind of circling back to something that I really care about, which is music and singing and my ability there. I hadn't done it in a really long time.
Before you've done it though, you had done the national anthem maybe 100 times at high school basketball games. And like you've done that so many times that it was like second nature. So you thought, I got this. And then you didn't in that moment.
Yeah.
And it was hard.
Yeah.
But what did I say?
Greg in that moment said, it's going to be a great story someday.
And here we are.
And today is someday because even though I recently shared that story, now I have a redemption story to follow it.
Yep.
And it gives me goosebumps and I could cry because it's a pretty big
redemption story.
Pretty big redemption moment. Yeah.
All right. So let's go back to the national anthem flop. How many years ago? 8 years ago? 6 years ago?
It was several. I mean, definitely over 5.
Yeah. Maybe like 7 years ago. In that moment, it was like, ugh. And I feel like maybe you kind of shied away from singing a little bit. You didn't really show much enthusiasm for it at that time after that, which who wouldn't? I mean, it was a pretty big blow to your ego.
So when I was younger, it was such a huge part of who I was. And I was recognized for it a lot.
It was a big part of your identity. Yeah.
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 And I was bulletproof.
Yeah.
And then you become a teenager and a young adult and a young mom and a wife of a musician who plays in a band every other weekend, whatever the case may be, very frequently, who's surrounded by other very talented musicians, who has a history of playing in a band that has a record deal in arenas. Mm-hmm. It became something that I just didn't really do anymore.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because of you, it just all of that, right? And the only time I ever did it was drunk karaoke or drunk jumping on stage with you guys or some other local band.
Like way back in the day.
Way back in the day. 12, 15 years ago. And then you're drunk and you don't care and nobody cares. And it's not like you're really...
You laugh it off.
You're not really performing. You're not really showing your ability. It's just in the moment doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Trying out for that was the first time I had put myself out there in that way to be, I guess, judged again for something that I hung my hat on for so long.
Very vulnerable.
And the kids were there, you were there. Like it was a moment that flopped and it was a punch to the gut. And I did shy away from it from that point forward because I'm like, well, maybe this isn't something that I'm not great at anymore. Maybe that was, great, good for you. Big fish, small pond, little kid. Cool. I didn't sing very much. Plus, during that period of time, and I think a lot of people probably experience this, you're not really sure how to reconnect with what you love and what you did when you were a little kid, because now you're an adult and you have responsibilities and you're supposed to have it all together. And that dream that you had when you were 12, well, that's over because real life is now here and there's no time for that.
We were going to gymnastics every weekend. We were, just busy building a business from ground up. I mean, life was lifing hardcore during that time.
Yeah. We're trying to repair our marriage. We have small children. We are living in an area where we don't really know anyone. Navigating
not being alcoholics.
Yeah, we had recently
What do we do
drinking.
with all this time now?
Yeah, so who am I?
Yeah.
And that moment showed me that maybe I'm not quite the singer that I thought I was.
Yep.
So that was a difficult moment. And it wasn't until 2020 when COVID hit and we kind of had a little bit more time and also some moments of like, what do I want to do with my life? Like, life is short. This is a weird thing happening and nobody knows what to do. I'm not going to waste another minute.
Yep.
You started doing music again.
Yep.
And that was when I decided to write a book. It didn't even dawn on me to like do music.
You never sang.
Join you in music.
Yeah.
I was very rigid about it because I learned to play piano in a very rigid way where it was right or wrong. And same with singing.
Yeah.
And then I was coming off of a huge flop and I was just like, this is not my thing anymore.
Put it in the closet and shut the door and just didn't look at it.
Right.
And then I remember asking you to come in and sing on a song that I was working on.
Yeah.
And I was just like, you opened your mouth and sang, and I was like, my God. And you just didn't even put much effort towards it. And it was like the most beautiful thing that I had heard through my headphones. And I'm like, wow.
It's like you had never really heard me sing before that moment because I was either drunk or singing in the shower and maybe you weren't taking me seriously. And I had this flop, and I came in and sang like it was nothing. And you're like, who are you?
Yeah. It literally, I was like, my mind was blown because I'm like, you're my wife. I know everything about you. But then all of a sudden there's this whole side of you that I didn't know existed. Literally, that sounds absolutely crazy, but it was the 100% truth that I was like, saw something in you that I had never seen yet.
Well, and that's because I think I must have just been comfortable at that moment to come out and play.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, what I started hanging my hat on, and I still do, I really put a lot of effort into my athletic endeavors.
Mm-hmm.
So, marathons and professional bodybuilding and mountain climbing and all these things that I've done, I enjoy doing. They're healthy for me, physically, mentally, they're my thing. But they became like I became the athlete. You were the musician, I was the athlete. And in that moment, I came in and sang and you were like, oh, okay, welcome to the party.
Mm-hmm.
And I think honestly, and it's not anyone's fault or anyone's influence or anyone making me feel less than, it was really challenging for me to have been recognized my whole life for being a musician, for being a singer and being a pianist, and then not being welcomed or accepted or recognized by you and your bandmates or peers. Again, not their fault, my lens.
Well, why would they know any different?
Correct.
And it's their sandbox.
Right.
And you're there to be a supportive spouse.
Right.
It's like, but that's my thing too.
And I had like, I always say this, I don't even know the story, but it feels fitting. Like I had like Yoko Ono complex where I was afraid that I was going to be a problem for you. So I just, anytime I would chime in or say anything, I was usually 6 beers in and I came across as a bitch and overbearing and like, nobody asked you.
The delivery was a little, no, not that there was any really these moments, but
the few
awkward.
that I can remember, they were awkward. So,
because it's 2:30 in the morning. Let me go inside.
Yeah.
But so on that musical journey though, we're like kind of toe in the water with it. And then we had this crazy idea to go to Seattle and record at London Bridge with Jeff Ott and redo Pearl Jam and Temple the Dog and record the song that we wrote 15 years ago.
Right.
When we got there, I remember, I of course, at that point, I'm like, okay, I know you can sing. Let's literally fly across the country and go record in a real studio and see how this works. And I remember that moment when you're in the studio and you're kind of just testing the mics. And when you were in that room and you started singing, it got real serious real quick. Jeff was looking for, I'm like, okay, we got to like get this. And it was like one of these like Hollywood TV moments of like, I told you,
yeah,
she's got it.
Well, I remember that moment too. I had never recorded in the studio and you had, other than our home studio.
Yeah.
So now here I am in this iconic studio where all of these legendary albums and records have been made with you and a legendary producer and engineer. I don't know what the hell is happening. I've never done this before. I don't know what to expect. I don't know how I'm supposed to behave. I don't know, am I supposed to like have an opinion or just sing, or what am I supposed to do? And I just remember that moment too, where I timidly had played piano prior to that. And it was kind of like, meh, okay. And then I started singing. When people talk about a flow state, I feel like I have a couple, and that is definitely my most intense one, where I sing. I can close my eyes and I could just sing for hours and feel like 5 minutes when I open my eyes. That's what kind of happened in the studio. I had this moment of like, oh my God, this is me. This is the true essence of who I am. And it comes out through my voice. That gave me a lot of confidence, and it re-sparked this interest in music, because up to that point, for 3 years, you had been recording music in your studio and asking me to come in, and I like to help clean things up, and I'm a details person. I like to help produce it. Get rid of this, turn that up.
You could hear pitch. You would hear like that one word's pitchy. And I'd be like, I don't hear that. And I'd pull it up in the pitch correction app and be like, oh my God, you're right. It's like a half step off. And I'm like, how? Just time and time again. I've never seen anything like it. Like,
it's just years
crazy.
of training from like all the way back to when I was in middle school of like reading music, sight reading, singing, needing to be on pitch for competitions and different things. But I enjoyed that aspect, and I would sing here or there for you, but we never recorded anything. I have this block when it comes to creativity, and I wasn't able to like break that down enough to actually be involved in like singing and recording until we went to Seattle. And then that definitely reignited something inside of me that made me feel like, okay, we're doing this together, which feels awesome. We just created beautiful art together with Jeff and released it on Spotify as Waiting for Elise. We don't talk about it a lot, but shameless plug. That's our music project. It's Greg on drums, me on piano, and vocals, obviously. That's what we've done over the last couple of years in our quote unquote free time when we have the opportunity to record and release music together. I mean, you do a lot with other people and with your own artist profile, but when we have the opportunity, it also gave me the freedom and the confidence to record, sit at my own piano, which I'm so grateful to have, which as a little girl I dreamed to have, and record, just sit and play and sing. Recording is optional. I sit and play and sing a lot and don't record it.
And I'm always very upset with you. I'm like, did you record that? And you're like, I'm
like, it's too much. It's too dramatic to set up the camera. I just want to sit and sing. Leave me alone. It's my thing.
Like the cats all go nuts when she gets into the zone. And it's just a vibe, a vibration, an energy, a feeling. The whole house feels it.
It's true.
The cats are like, oh my God.
I know I'm on when Luna comes up. Our cat, she's like my cat. Comes up and can't stay off of me, just rubbing all over me and purring.
But your voice is just purring and it's humming, and it sounds amazing. And posting videos and reels, we did some Christmas music.
And that's been so fun because that's given me this like connection with myself that's been lacking for so many years. And it was because of those videos and because of being able to confidently put myself out there in that way, to set the vulnerability aside and the fear of being judged and the fear of not being perfect aside, and say, well, I love this and I'm just going to share it. And if people like it, great. And if they don't, fine. I enjoy doing it. I love doing it. And
cue the text message.
Yeah. And that's where I was going. That led to this opportunity, was that someone saw me in the way that I would love to be seen most, I do all of these things and they're all great and I love doing
Pinch
them.
Me. Right.
But to get a text that says, send me the demo of you singing the national anthem is quite an honor. And at first I was like, seriously? Are you sure? And then like a week later, I got the text that said, you're in. Mark your calendar for February 8th.
And we didn't sleep that night.
Yeah, no sleep. And then I kind of like let it sit. I had a like silent countdown going on in my head, and I would like sing a little and practice a little and think about it a little. But then when it got to 30 days out, it started to get more real, and then more practice and more
intense.
More intense.
And all that time, you're finishing your book. literally putting the final chef's kiss on your book,
Yeah.
sending it off to be like final proofread, edited,
The
and
same week.
off to production.
The same
week.
Yeah. So last week, I literally said, we are final. Send it off to our last like grammar spelling check edit before it gets sent off for interior formatting, like literal production. The same week that the podcast turned 2 years old.
2 years old.
Thank you all for being here. And then
That's crazy.
all of that happened last week.
Yeah.
I'm like literally fighting back tears over here because when you say it like that, it's like, holy shit. It's easy to get caught up in like the day to day and feel like I'm never moving the needle. I'm never doing anything. I think everyone feels that way. But if you really take a second to allow yourself to see all of the things that you do on a regular basis, all while being a mom and a wife and running a business and helping people close loans to buy new homes and
getting 5-star Google reviews, Zillow reviews, helping people do that kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds
Taking
braggadocious,
care of your kids.
but the thing is that you don't, because you're afraid of sounding that way.
Yeah.
And I'm just putting it out here for you and for our listeners to remind them that like, it isn't really about telling everyone about it or broadcasting. It's just about allowing yourself to say, okay, this isn't arrogant or narcissistic or pompous to think about all the things that you do and give yourself a damn round of applause and pat on the back because we manage and handle so many things on a regular basis that we just don't ever take a pause and say, wow, I'm actually doing okay. Like I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And last week was a really big week. And I feel almost outside of myself to think about last week. And the reason is, and this is kind of like a sidebar, I can't help myself but give a message. Oh God, I'm going to cry. I'm literally going to cry. So I have notebooks. I write down goals. I have a color changing pen that I organize my life with. And I keep them to go back to and look through. In 2017, on New Year's Eve, I wrote down a page full of what I called 10X goals. We had just gone to, earlier that year, a 10X conference, Grant Cardone, where the whole premise of his book and his conference and all of the people that he brings in to speak is that, like, if you have a goal, why not 10X it? Make it 10 times bigger than you ever could imagine you could achieve. So that year I wrote down my 10X goals. And on that list of goals was the reset button. I didn't start writing it until 2020, but the idea of the reset button, my book that will be out soon, was born on New Year's Eve of 2017, turning 2018. And now in 2025, it's finally done.
Yep.
After we came home from the studio in Seattle the second time, when we went out to kind of finish everything up right after we released the songs, we released them in November of 2023. I made a new list, a target list of people that I would need to contact at the different arenas and stadiums in Tampa and Orlando to pitch myself to sing the national anthem at a game or an event. And on that list in November of 2023 are all of those people and those venues, and then the note, like the list of like, well, I have to record a demo. Mm-hmm. And that was November of 2023. And I never pitched to anyone. I never recorded the demo. I didn't get to it yet. I was so focused on finishing this book and staying focused on making sure that we deliver a podcast every week and being a great mom and
making sure
all the things.
Everyone has food.
Making sure all my priorities are right. Yeah. Music was kind of, and still is, kind of last on the list. Yeah. But it was on the list, I guess is the point. Both the book and what we're talking about today, these ideas, these goals, these dreams that were bigger than I could have ever imagined were on the list. I wrote them down. They were things that I visualized and that I could see to believe that they could happen and to write them down almost was like a vote of confidence in myself that like if I write them down, they don't just become some ridiculous goal, they become a to-do.
Mm-hmm.
And if I have a to-do list and a checklist, I'll be sure that every decision that I make or everything that I do is in alignment with getting to cross that off of the list and complete it. And so it's ironic, it's beautifully ironic that those two things were on two separate lists of big, ridiculous goals. And I was able to basically cross them both off the list at the same time. Yeah. And actually this singing at Raymond James was not like specific. Like the reset button was pretty specific on my list, but this one was just more of like, I want to sing the national anthem. It's what I do. Mm-hmm. And I want to do it big. Mm-hmm. And it was bigger. It was way bigger than I imagined when I wrote it down and when I made that list of cold emails to reach out to.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I'm proud of you for believing in yourself enough to write it down and not be like, oh, I don't deserve this. Because I think that's what a lot of my problems, a lot of people's problems is they don't feel like they're worthy of winning. They don't feel like they're worthy of success. They don't feel like they're worthy of having a big, beautiful, bold life. They don't feel like they're worthy of it. I think that it gets just pounded out of us all through our adolescent years and through life. It just kind of gets to feeling like, why even try? Because I try and then this happens and that. I mean, you tried and you were out of breath and you didn't get the national anthem, but I know you well enough to know that you weren't going to stop.
I am nothing if not tenacious.
You are
that
literally
is for
a
sure.
dog with the bone, you know.
Wasn't necessarily even.
I'm going to get you some tissues.
I had to take a short break for some tissues.
Tissue break.
We get so bogged down by everyone's expectations and what we're supposed to be doing that, like, for me, it wasn't even about worthiness necessarily. It was this dichotomy between what I really dream of doing and what I should be doing. And that it's irresponsible for me to think that that's possible for me now because I'm in my 30s or I'm in my 40s and that time has come and gone. It's time to be serious now. You own a business and you are married and you have two beautiful teenage children who have their own things that they're pursuing. You have a husband who has his own goals and like know your role. And I feel like a lot of people feel that way and unfortunately succumb to that feeling of like, again, not worthiness, but pressure almost of like, well, I can't do that. And I felt
combination of not worthy enough and all these pressures. So definitely it gets subdued, you know?
And I felt that way for a while. That's heavily what the whole reset button book is about, is giving yourself permission to say, well, hang on, I can be all of those things too. And I can still find and reconnect with who I am and make decisions based on the way that I want to live my life and the things that I want to pursue. And when you do that and they're the right things and they are truly what you love, and I'm not saying like follow your passion, but don't pay your bills. I'm saying like make sure that you're prioritizing the right things, but leave yourself on that list. Things fall into place. And so I believe firmly that without those big goal lists to keep me focused, without support, and without the strength and fearlessness to put myself out there and pursue things, to set aside vulnerability and judgment, mostly from myself, none of these things would have happened. This weekend wouldn't have happened because no one was going to come just knock on my door. Like you said, like the guys in the band all those years ago, they weren't going to be like, hey, Cameo, can you sing? Oh, you can? Cool. Join us. And I never gave them a reason to believe otherwise. So this situation, the same. No one was going to come knocking or text me, hey, can you sing? Do you want to sing the national anthem at a huge event? If I hadn't showcased that I could.
That's right.
By reconnecting with that piece of me. And that all comes from like knowing that I'm worthy and knowing that just because I'm older or just because I'm all of these things, I can still be that too.
Yep. I used to spend so many years wishing people would call me to make music with them. I totally understand. And
Mhm.
until you just decide, I'm going to make music, I'm going to do whatever it is that I want to do, whatever that may be for you, then it becomes like you're unstoppable because you're like, I'm not waiting on anybody. No one has that control over me. I'm doing this.
Right. It's really sad. I mean, it's really tragic actually to see people wither away and not continue to pursue what they love to do out of fear or out of lack of self-worth or out of busyness and not making themselves a priority. You can see when somebody is lit up by something.
Mm-hmm.
You can feel it in their energy. And you can recognize in yourself how contrastingly different it is when you're not, by having an experience where you bet on yourself or you put yourself in an uncomfortable situation or you do something bigger than you ever thought you could. And you come out the other side and the rush of adrenaline and the rush of emotion that you feel, the amount of alive that you feel. God, I didn't know I was going to get so emotional. This is so weird. But the amount of alive that you feel makes you realize, like, I didn't realize I was dead in that area so much.
Right.
I was sharing with you off camera earlier in conversation that, like, I've done other big things in my life, and some of them at the top level, like bodybuilding, for example. You know, I didn't go to the Olympia, but I was an IFBB pro, a professional bodybuilder who did compete. And once I got to that level and I competed as a professional for the first time, and I worked at the Arnold as a pro at a large supplement company booth at the Arnold, you know, like those are top level activities.
You met Arnold.
I went mute, but I did look at Arnold in the face and shake his hand and
He
smile.
said something, but I don't remember what he said.
I have a bad history of that. But it was clear to me in that moment, like, this isn't what I want to do. Like, I don't want to continue to pursue this. This does not light me up. It does not fit in my life in the way that I want to. It doesn't make me feel the way that I want to feel.
Yeah.
And other things that I've done that have been big accomplishments, big career opportunities, big, you know, athletic endeavors where I do them. It feels awesome. I'm proud of it, but I also feel like, but that's not, I don't want to continue to do that.
Yeah.
This was not that.
Yeah.
And that's very vulnerable for me to say too. What is my deal with all my crying today? Big crybaby. But I haven't talked about this since it happened. So this is like, this is real and raw for this episode because we haven't talked much about it, but like,
it's only been a couple days.
Yeah, I'm still processing.
Are you eating yet? Are you still?
I'm eating.
Did you eat anything yet today?
I have not today. Leave me alone. My eating habits they're just fine. But this was not the same feeling. And again, I think where I was going before I started to get all ball baby again was it's very vulnerable for me to say that because I don't want that to be the one and only time I do something like that.
Yeah.
I don't want that to be the only time I get to feel that feeling.
Yeah.
Call it a dopamine junkie or whatever you want. I love that. Doing it at that level, I told you last night, I'm ruined, but it makes me want to double down on believing in myself and in my talent, my unique talent, because of the way that it made me feel alive.
Yeah.
And I've shied away from that for a really long time.
Yeah.
Most people do for the same reason I do, which is like, it's so close. It's so important to me that if people don't think I sing great, if I'm not perfect, if everyone doesn't love it, or, you know, people know they're better than me, then, you know, then who do I think I am? And then that's
the death of your ego, your self-belief.
Right.
You know?
But it isn't about that.
Yeah.
That's probably where I've gone wrong in the past with it being such an identifying factor for me, an identity that I clung to, a label, and my perfectionistic tendencies, that being able to set them down, I can see there's a lot of clarity. I can, you know, in gravity in this moment. That was also something that was a very huge feeling on Sunday morning as I listened to the playback and finally watched a lot of the videos, and, you know, I start to get in my own head and start picking it apart. No, I was flat here. And when I found out I was doing this, I found something on Instagram that I will share. It was like a list of, I don't know, 5 to 10 things to tell yourself when you have a really big opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Things like, I get to do this. I'm grateful to be able to. All of those things. And I feel like I do a really good job of already kind of like living by after years of work and practice.
Mm-hmm.
But the one on that list that stood out that I really, really felt on Sunday was, God damn, if I start crying again, we're edit all this out.
Sorry.
No. It was in the middle of the list and it said, it doesn't have to be perfect to be great. And I felt that so deeply on Sunday and still, because it wasn't perfect and it could have been better. And I would love to do it better if I can do it again, but it was still great.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people get hung up on it needing to be perfect to even start. But I promise that it feels almost as good, if not better, than being perfect, because it was so fulfilling in all the right ways that whether it was perfect or not meant nothing.
Well, this idea of being perfect is actually a myth, because no matter what you think, you're always going to have something to pick it apart.
Yeah.
Being a perfectionist that you are, and I mean, it's just an impossible unicorn you're chasing that leads to a lifetime of frustration if you don't get a hold of that thing.
Right.
Seriously.
Perfectionism is elusive because what's perfect to one person is not the same to the next person.
That's right.
And, unless you're really looking at things that can be measured and graded.
Well, that's the world you came from. With
That's
music.
right.
You would go to competitions. They would say, 98%?
You didn't use the right fingers on the right keys, like.
I've seen people put posts on the waiting for release reels of you playing the piano and singing, like, your hand placement's wrong. It's like, what? Who? Why? I mean.
And those types of things don't bother me so much because they're so ridiculous and obviously not important that it's like, thank you. And then see yourself out. Welcome. You're welcome back if you want, but no thanks. Like sometimes for me, it's less about what other people think and more about the harshness that I put myself under. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people could probably relate to that too, is that we are our own worst critic and we wouldn't dare speak to the people that we love or even people that are strangers in the way that we speak to ourselves.
Yeah.
You would just never say some of the cold, mean, nitpicky, awful things to other people that you think about yourself. I mean, I guess some people might, but I wouldn't.
Yeah.
And if I could extend the encouragement and the support that I give to other people to myself on a regular basis, and I try, it would become a much easier route. But then I'd probably find ways to make it more difficult because that's what I do. Speaking of difficulty, that was another thing, was that like a lot of people said, like, how did you do that? How did you get up there in front of all those people? Like probably almost 50,000 people, right? I had imposter syndrome. I was more nervous at sound check than I was on event day. I didn't know how I was going to show up. I've done things. It's been years. I've never done anything in front of that many people. I attribute that to doing hard things in the past where you just do. And I'm not talking about like huge things. I'm talking about showing up for yourself. Like I've said it a million times on this podcast and to everybody else ever, the hardest part of going for a run is putting on your shoes and getting out the door. Well, I believe that, but you just do it. And then once you have your shoes on and you're out the door, you just run. Mm-hmm. When I get in a cold bath of ice water, if I slowly walk to it and I'm like, oh God, I don't want to do it, it's going to be so cold. It's really hard and it sucks. But if I just march right in, like this is what I'm doing and I don't think about it, you just get in and then you're there and then you just get control of your breathing. And this was really no different. So those small things that I've practiced on a regular basis helped me in that moment say, okay, it's go time. The guy gave me the point. I handed my phone to Faith, who was like, I can't believe you just went up there. She thought I was going to like give her a hug and be like, oh my God, I'm so nervous. But I just like marched up the steps. He gave me the point. I started singing and then you're just doing it. And then you just do your thing and try not to think about it and find all of the reasons why it's scary or hard. And a lot of people do those hard things on a regular basis out of like almost autopilot. People do hard things. And again, back to like, we never give ourselves a minute to think about all of the great things that we've done or all of the hard things that we do, because we don't want to get too hung up and don't get too full of yourself. Well, take a minute and think about all the hard things that you do that you don't have to do in ways that you show up for yourself that prepare you for bigger moments, no matter what that is.
Yep. I would say, just from a big picture perspective, as your husband and your film guy, that weekend, I just want to capture all of it, you know. But
and thank you for doing that.
Of course, but it just seemed like you had this sense of calm and locked inness that if I didn't know any better and I just was there and I was paying witness to this person doing the national anthem, you looked like a star. You handled yourself like a star. You treated the staff and everyone there like a complete professional. Like from A to Z, it was top notch. And of course, that's a top notch situation that you were involved in too. It wasn't some, fly by night. It was like, it's pretty much high level, everything. But you had your own dressing room. I was so proud of you. I mean, like just everything about it was just like literally your first gig.
Yeah.
Once you decided a couple years, I'm going to start singing, I'm going to put myself out there. And we didn't just go get gigs around. We just were like, let's just keep making music at home and post them online. And then your first actual gig is at Raymond James Stadium. So it's like there was no workup to that, or no practice, or no preseason, or it was just like, okay.
Yeah. Our daughter, Faith, was asking me like, how will you prepare yourself for what it's going to feel like in that moment a couple weeks before? And I'm like, I don't know. She's like, you need to just go out in Publix parking lot and start singing just so you can sing in front of people.
Yeah.
And, I think it's just a moment where, again, I have confidence that I will show up because I show up for myself.
Yes.
Also the idea of like, well, what was I going to do? It would be like, I'm too scared. I can't do it. And, in the 11th hour, it's this idea of not like act as if, fake it till you make it in a negative way, but like, I have to own this.
Yeah.
If I want this and I have this opportunity, don't blow it by being insecure. Yeah. Don't blow it by being scared.
Yeah.
I told myself 100 times what I share with everyone else, that fear and excitement are the same thing. Your body experiences them in the same way, with rapid breathing and sweaty palms and nausea and increased heart rate and all the other things that come along with those. It's just whether you decide to lean into the fear and describe it as fear, or like lean into the thrill and the excitement of it. How do you want to frame it for yourself?
Yep.
And I had to choose to frame it as excitement. I was locked in. I was ready.
Yeah. Well, what was also different about this is we were really prepared as far as like, we had a good schedule. So you knew exactly when you were going to be singing. So we got there really early. And you had plenty of time to get ready, and Faith was all over it. She was your
glam
stylist, glam squad. And I was like your, film crew, and kind of, I don't know what I was, just making sure. I was making sure you had your tea and your apple and your, all your supplies, so you'd be ready.
Yeah, that was the cutest thing. The next day there was like a Ziploc baggie on the counter. It had a bottle of honey, an apple with 2 bites out of it.
Then I was like, here, right before you went out, I'm like, here, take a bite.
Yeah, my lipstick's on. I'm like getting ready to literally walk out the door and do my walk. And Greg's like, take a bite of apple, which I'm glad you did. I wanted it. Throat coat tea. What else was in there? Tylenol and ibuprofen and a couple protein bars. Yeah. And like you said, I didn't really touch any of them, but you nervously
when
made.
We got there, yeah. I'm like, all right, I got to eat this trail mix. But you were prepared, you were locked in, and you had a good schedule, so there was no little landmines that were going to throw you off. So learn that from the previous experience.
Yeah.
And then also standing in the tunnel, getting ready to go out, they needed you there by what?
6:20.
6:20, so we went there at 6.
No.
What time were we standing there?
We left my dressing room at 6:13.
Oh, okay. It felt like we were there for a long time.
Yeah.
Okay, so we were there early
Yeah.
and we were ready and there was no last minuteness.
Yeah.
And I remember just moments before, they said, all right, let's walk out here. I remember just like looking at you and it was like, because we do a lot of sparring and martial arts and training and stuff. And there's like this zone you kind of get into when you're throwing punches at your head and kicking and stuff. You got to be locked in and paying attention. And I remember just like breathing with you, looking at you like, you got this. Like it was like getting ready to go get in the ring kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely locked in that way. Meditation, martial arts, all of those things have helped me in that moment.
You were in the zone.
Yeah.
I could tell you were going to nail it just because you were like,
yeah,
you weren't scared. You were ready.
I was ready.
Yeah.
It was a readiness.
Yeah.
And it was because of those types of things as well. And there were things earlier in the day that could have shook me. We got there early, but there was a delay in getting into the stadium for a multitude of reasons, and took a little longer to get to my room than I wanted. I didn't put any makeup on or do anything to get ready before we left because I thought I'm going to have plenty of time in my room. And I did. I had plenty of time still, but like it could have rattled me that I had less time than I thought. I thought I was going to have a few hours. I ended up having, an hour and a half maybe by the time we finally got in there and it was go time. So there were things that could have rattled me. And again, it goes back to like, how do you want to view things? I could have viewed that as everything's effed up and it's going to go terribly and nothing's working out and I'm stressed out. I just took some deep breaths and every opportunity was just a new moment to just kind of like, it's going to be okay. This is awesome. Like remind myself, this is awesome. Like don't even do that to yourself. And you're right. The staff and everyone was like incredible. So that certainly helped. Everyone that I worked with individually was obviously very top-notch professional. They all made me feel very comfortable. They all basically like anything. I felt like anything I needed, it was just kind of like appeared and I didn't need much, but when I did, it was there. And so without that level of support and professionalism, it could have been different too.
Yep.
So I'm very grateful for that. That was an amazing experience. The Supercross family is amazing. So, and it was also very special because I was surrounded by all of the people that I love. So our kids, my dad flew down for a quick trip, my dad and stepmom. My mom wasn't able to make it, but she was texting me all day. And all of the right things, the meaningful things were the things that were prioritized that day that all made it even better. That all made it, to me, like make sense too, that I may have wanted this 10 years ago. I may have wanted this 5 years ago, but I wouldn't have been ready to receive it or to seize the opportunity in the way that I was able to and show up for the opportunity in the way that I was able to this weekend because of my own personal growth and the things that I've practiced on a regular basis to get to this point, to be more solid and bulletproof and more zeroed in on what's important. It was a surreal out of body moment that I just for days now, I just don't even know how to snap back to reality, honestly.
So leading up to it, I knew in my heart you were going to nail it. I knew it was going to be great. I knew it was going to be awesome. You knew it was. I mean, like you just, you believe. But there's also this element of like technical issues. There's this element of like, what if my voice cracks? What if, who knows?
I can't breathe.
What if I lose, what if I get nervous and forget the words? I mean, there's a lot of things. So months leading up to it, you're living life, you're doing, but you're like, you've got this huge thing coming up and it's just, the anticipation is just, oh my gosh. And you've got to show up. Like it's you, a microphone, a spotlight, and
a crowd that's been told to stand up and be quiet.
And they know all the words.
and exactly how the song is supposed to sound.
They're comparing you to Jennifer Hudson's version of it.
No pressure.
Yeah. It's like the most pressure thing ever. But then there's that moment when you did it, and I knew when you hit that last thing, and then like the whole place was like, wow, including me. I'm like, I couldn't help myself. I'm just like... And then there's this rush of like, oh my God, you did it. Oh my God. And then that's like kind of where we've been for the last couple of days. But then it's like, now what?
Yeah. There's definitely a crash. There's
Yeah.
definitely a moment of like, and this is just one big thing that I've done. So I can't imagine someone who's had their entire career be these big moments, and then for whatever reason it's over, child star or whatever. And then you just kind of were like, well, where's all this big stuff that was happening and this adrenaline that I feel? Like, I don't know what will ever make me feel that amount of pure, genuine adrenaline again.
Yeah.
I've jumped out of airplanes once.
One time.
I've jumped out of an airplane. Let me rephrase that properly.
One airplane, two airplanes.
But even that was like second to this, that amount of like adrenaline. And so this is going to be hard to top from that perspective, which is why I'm like, I'm ruined. But it also motivates me to continue to stay connected to myself in this way and put myself out there and seek out other opportunities. Yep. It was already on my list of things to do.
Yeah.
It just so happened that this opportunity kind of presented itself first, and I'm so grateful for it. And now I feel a little bit of momentum and a little bit of wind in my sails. It gets very difficult when you work in silence and when you do a lot of different things and when you don't take a moment to pause and give yourself any kind of like recognition that you're doing these things. It gets difficult to go without what you consider wins. And this felt like a win, and it definitely helped. Even finishing my book feels like a win, but not like this kind of win. So this definitely helped bring in some new life into me. Yeah. On the note, like you said, I hit that note in the crowd, and a little like behind the scenes of that moment. I had in what are called in-ears. They're like really tight AirPods that you put in your ear and it blocks out all the sound. They hook around your ear, and all I could hear was myself coming through the microphone on purpose, because there was like a 2-second delay basically from when a word would come out of my mouth and when it would actually be received into the stadium. So in order to keep myself good and be able to sing, I had to have those in so that I couldn't hear any of that, or it would have been really confusing and muddy and scary and awful. So thank God for in-ears. Thanks for the hookup on those, Feld Entertainment or Supercross or whoever. But I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't hear the crowd. There was a plane flying overhead for a large portion of the anthem that I didn't know was there until I listened to the video playback. I couldn't hear anything until I sang the part about banner yet wave. Then everybody cheered and I could hear them. And in the video, it's fun to see like this smile come across my face because I'm like, oh,
so genuine.
They're
so
there.
Real. Yeah.
And then the note, the high note, and everybody kind of went nuts. The rest of the thing I could hear that, but still I could only hear it like a little tiny bit compared to when I watched the video and how loud it was. And that was really a cool moment.
If you hear somebody screaming like a little girl really loud, that was me
on the video.
Yeah. I'm like, wow. I could not.
And I appreciate that. And as you should be. And the pyro on Home of the Brave at the very end. I've waited my whole life for pyro in that moment. Like, I've visualized that a million times, that I'm singing this big song for a big event and there's pyro. To have that actually happen is just absolutely wild.
Yeah.
That's another thing I didn't touch on, but leading up to this, as we got closer, like within the 30-day mark and I started practicing more often, I was still so nervous to practice, like even when anyone was home. I would do it when you would go pick up Ben from school and Faith was at work. I would sing by myself in our house so that you guys weren't around until like the last couple weeks. Then I had to like get serious and just sing as often as I could. But I was using like candles and hairspray and brushes and all the things that people joke about using as microphones to practice. Like, how am I going to hold the microphone? Yeah. How am I going to, move around? I didn't know how I was going to do it when I got there because I didn't know how I was going to feel in front of 50,000 people. Practicing and visualizing that moment was a huge part of the success too. Like allowing myself to see it when it was done and that it was successful and that it went well, instead of leading up to that point worrying, what if I forget? What if I forget the words? What if my voice cracks? What if I this? What if I that? I didn't let myself go down that rabbit hole very often. And when I would bring myself back to the present moment, because it was like, you cannot allow yourself to believe that is what is going to happen, or you're going to make it happen.
Yeah.
And I know manifestation and hokey pokey, but I believe in the power of
It's not hokey
envisioning what you want to happen as a very strong way to prepare yourself.
And you did. The way you held the mic and moved and looked around. Because, if it's me, I'm probably going to look at one thing and just be like frozen because, just trying not to lose my shit,
Yeah.
But you did such a great job of projecting like your vibe, like looking over here and looking over here and holding the mic off to the side. And just, it was like watching someone that's just done that a million times.
Thank you.
It was awesome. It was really good.
Well, I didn't want to look at the Jumbotron, which was right in front of me, because one, there'd be a delay, and two, who sees themselves on a Jumbotron? Like that would have been really weird, and I don't know what I would have done. So I was trying to be sure to not look straight ahead in that way. I didn't want to like look in the crowd too much because that's a lot of people and holy shit. But it was like kind of foggy and the lights were down and it was dark and I could see people, but honestly, there were so many of them that you couldn't really see people. You could just see a crowd of people. Yeah. And so I just kind of like stayed in my own little space.
You got into it.
I just found a flow state.
Yep.
So much so that, again, I didn't realize until I listened to the playback, like, man, that was a little off. That was a little off. But it was okay. Like it was, had I been so critical of myself, even while I was singing, I probably would have panicked myself.
And
like,
you wouldn't have enjoyed it.
Oh shit, that was flat. You just started the song with a flat note.
Yeah.
The rest of this is going to be shit.
Yeah.
But I didn't. Like I knew that that doesn't serve anyone ever in the history of anything ever. So if you do that to yourself, knock it off. Yeah. And that's for me too. And in that moment, in the past, I may have. And
all it does is rob you of excitement and joy and childlike enthusiasm for what you're doing.
Right. And it's okay.
It's okay. Yeah.
Some people might have known it was a little flat and other people might not have. And a lot of people didn't care. Yeah. And it's fine. Nobody cares as much as I do. Yeah. And that's a huge takeaway from this experience.
And I noticed it with you. Like you did not overly criticize, just generally speaking. You just really enjoyed this entire thing from A to Z and you really soaked it up and you've really let it kind of give you a lot of juice and energy and all, I've just seen it light you up in a great way, like a 12-year-old that doesn't know that they're being judged or that's being critical. They're just like, I'm doing something I love to do. It feels good. All y'all hear it and y'all like it. And it's just such a pure feeling that you're vibing with it right now that it's so nice to see. Like it's so healthy. Like you're going to look back at this and be like, wow, that was incredible. And you're going to look back at it and be like, and I was there for it. Yeah. And you're not going to look back at it and be like, I wish I was there for it, but I was so critical. I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah. I definitely didn't want to come out of that moment in that way. I also recognize through myself and my own work, through you, through our kids, through therapy, like the world is harsh enough.
Yes.
And kind of back to that, like I would never be that critical of anyone else.
Right.
I would never point out all the flat parts or that, maybe you should have worn something different or your hair didn't look right. Or like, I just would never do that to someone else. So why would I allow myself to do that to me?
And you may have in the past. When
I
you were
totally
critical,
would have.
You would have in the past and you're critical, but that's the growth. And you're telling the truth. You don't pick people apart to make yourself feel better today. That's not who you are today. And that's how you're able to live that way purely yourself. And that's taken a lot of work because the natural tendency is to judge and criticize. Yeah. But it's like that you're not seeing it that way. You would look at someone else doing what you just did and be like, how brave, how exciting for them, how cool, sounded amazing. The crowd dug it. There's just so much positivity that you don't have to focus on the negative.
And perhaps that's why this moment didn't happen until now.
Exactly.
I wasn't ready to show up in that way in the past. Yep. The past versions of me weren't where I am today to be able to receive this and to own it and to accept it for what it is.
Yep.
And you're right. And this isn't for my own ego, but more for perspective. Like the next day was the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And the Super Bowl national anthem is the most coveted moment in the history of national anthems for anyone ever, everywhere. Maybe the Olympics. Way to go, Gaga. You know what I mean? Like, okay, but the Super Bowl.
Did she do the Olympics?
She did this year.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure she did.
Sounds good.
Whatever.
We can say that.
She did some performances at the Olympics, and I am pretty sure that the national anthem was one of them. Regardless, the Super Bowl is like the pinnacle moment for a singer to do the national anthem. And John Batiste did it in a Louisiana way, a New Orleans, however you prefer to say that way. And it wasn't perfect. And it was heavily criticized, but it was great. And he had a moment, he had to decide, like there had to be a moment for him where he decided, like, I have this opportunity. I want to feel great about how I show up. And I know I'm not for everyone. And how dare I alter the anthem? That's not for everyone. And that doesn't sit well with everyone. But I loved it from an art perspective of like, way to show up and deliver. And like, I might not have felt that way in the past about him or anyone else. I might have judged and criticized and, thought how much better I could have done and all those things that bring negative energy to a situation. And I think it's easy to fall into that trap because we all relate things to ourselves.
Yep.
And that's how we kind of see how we're doing and how we measure up. And that's fine. We use social media as a way to do that and make ourselves feel better or worse about ourselves. Again, all fine if you have a really clear vantage point or a really clear idea of keeping that in check, a way to keep that in check. Through my own evolution, it feels so much more free and so much more fulfilling to just err on the side of being positive and supportive.
Yep.
It comes back to you in ways that may not be directly associated with you, but through your own self-love and self-talk, it certainly comes back. Whew. It's a lot to digest.
Yeah.
All of this, what actually happened, and then all of the emotions afterward, and then how it applies to everything else in your life that's not related to this moment, and all the things leading up to it, and then what it means going forward. Like, it's a lot.
Yeah.
I'm here for it.
Yeah.
I'm happy to have all of these feelings, but it's a lot.
Well, it also shows you that people believe in you. And believe in that little girl that lives in you that's excited about singing and excited about music, the one that hasn't had any criticism or judgment, or the one that's just pure childlike wonder and enjoyment and excitement about creating music.
Yeah.
So my hope is that you use this as a fuel store and you'll just load up your backpack full of energy, excitement, love, juice, so that you can just make a ton of music with me, with other people. I hope you sing 100 more national anthems at big events, small events, whatever. I mean, it's so fun to see you do it. You do it so well. And I mean, this is like, I feel like a new chapter beginning where your book's now done. People are going to get to know the backstory, that this hasn't just been given to you. You've had to work very hard, and there's
through
been
a lot of ugly moments and a lot of moments of luck, and
there's luck, luck.
Sure.
But there's been a lot of dedication and seeing things through that, have taken a lot of grit and determination. So
and the acceptance of all of those things that kind of, again, I might not have been able to show up to this moment without those things. Like as ugly as some of them are, as judged as I will be, as hard as they've been for me to accept or for us to process through, they're all a part of who I am. And without them, I may not be who I am.
You're not stuck as the person that you were a decade ago or 20 years ago. This is like, you're writing your story every day as a lifetime in itself. Live it.
I want for everyone else, everyone listening, for you, for our kids, for my parents, for everyone to like fully embrace and experience that. I genuinely do. I don't know what's around the corner, and I don't know how long I'll be here, or, things happen. Bad things happen to good people, and you just don't know when that's going to happen. So every day is a lifetime. And it's like, I just want to make sure that everything that I'm doing is in alignment with staying happy, staying high, staying positive and inspiring. And like, I want that for everyone else. I want everyone else to know what that feels like deep down at my core, which is the reason it's a driving force for me. And like this weekend and the feeling that I have had and have, like, I want to tap into that in those moments when I'm not sure and remind myself so that there's that momentum that keeps going. And that's how you feel when you finish any big event, know. I feel very supported, I feel very loved, and I feel very grateful. And now it's my turn to just continue to try to pour that back out into the world, like churn it around a little bit. And
well, and I think you do that in a way of not hiding from your gifts and the luck and the fortune and the good favor that you have today. You have your health, and you have this beautiful singing voice, and you have this tenacious attitude. So don't squander that away for the next decade and not pursue singing, because we all want to hear it.
Well, thank you.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Cameo Show.
It's been a little weird to be on this side of things.
We hope you've enjoyed it. Definitely give us a like on our... I'm going to mess this up.
It's hard to close out.
It's hard to close out.
Every week I get to this point and I stumble and I edit it out so none of you are privy to that information. But now that you're in that chair... I'm going to do it.
Don't edit this out. Please go subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram. And
it's at the Cameo Show Podcast on Instagram. We started a new one that's just podcast. We have the Cameo Show on our YouTube channel. And then also go to Instagram and follow Waiting for Elise. That is our music page that I never talk about. I just kind of like haphazardly put it out there in case somebody sees it. But today I'm going to lay it all out there. So
we're going to start leaning into this.
Thank you for allowing me to be emotional, and it's weird to be in this chair.
This one, you'll have to put a thing at the beginning of it that says, get your tissues.
Yeah.
You did great.
Thank you.
Everyone's so proud of you, and just
thank you.
You blew us all away.
Thank you. Till next time. Among other things on that list that were crossed off that were 10 times bigger than I thought I could ever achieve. 10 times. They're crossed off the list.